Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. تليفوني عالصامت، تعرف ان انا مش فاضي، موضوع مش ضابط. تعرف ان انا مش فاضي، تتكلم عن شي غير ماني قدامي، انا مش فاضي. تتكلم عن شي غير ماني قدامي، انا مش فاضي. تليفوني عالصامت، تعرف ان انا مش فاضي، موضوع مش ضابط. تعرف ان انا مش فاضي، تتكلم عن شي غير ماني قدامي، انا مش فاضي. تتكلم عن شي غير ماني قدامي، انا مش فاضي.
My name is I'm the associate producer here at the Art Center. And this artist talk is part of our Off the Stage events, which also includes workshops, community dinners, arts chats, and class visits. Today I'm very excited to introduce to you our panel, Yahael Camara Onono, who's the band leader, musician, and composer of Balimaya Project. Jali Bakary Konteh, who is griot and kora player of Balimaya Project. And today's artist talk will be moderated by NYUAD's Director of the Office of Inclusion and Equity, Fatiah Touray. This artist talk is also in partnership with the Office of Inclusion and Equity. And that's all from me. Please enjoy the talk and welcome our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. How loud do I have to be? Oh, no, how loud? Am I good? Okay. So I'm really excited to be here today to give this talk for a number of reasons. As was mentioned, my name is Fatiah Touray and I'm the Executive Director here at the Office of Inclusion and Equity. And I'm personally excited to be here with Yahael and Jali Bakary for a number of reasons. For one, we're both from the Gambia, so shout out to the Gambia out there. Y'all give it up. And Yahael and I are actually from the same ethnic group. We're both from the Soninke ethnic group, although
I don't understand all that.
we're not speaking the language, but we can at least greet each other. And for those of you who don't know much about some of the ethnic groups in West Africa, the Soninkes can be found in Mauritania, Mali, the Gambia, Senegal, Guinea as well, and others that I'm sure I'm leaving behind. And so today we're going to talk about not just the significance of music, but the role of the storyteller, the griot, these traditions that, you know, at least I was born and raised in, that you're bringing to other parts of the world. Also, I want to talk a little bit about social power within that, and I want us to think about second generation and third culture kids, like myself, like you, being born in London. I'm born in New York, but then how do we carry on some of those traditions? And we'll have this conversation all through a lens of thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then at the end, we'll provide some time for you all to ask questions as we have a lot to talk about. So I want to start off with the name of your group, Balimaya. Okay. Am I saying it right? Balimaya. Okay. And how you came to naming the group. You talk about taking the word from the Mandinga language that means the essence of kinship, and then you also talk about the fact that thinking about extended family, right, and what is shared within the mission. And so just to start off, to get to know a little bit more about you, and this is actually something we do with our students here. We don't simply ask people where they're from, but we ask you about the story of your name. So tell us a little bit about the story of your name, your full name, each of you, who named you, the significance of your names, and what your name means to you.
Okay. My name is Yahael Camara Onono. Yahael is actually, my mom went to university in Palestine. My mom went to university in Palestine, and she was looked after on the floor that she was on, was looked after by a young boy called Yahael as well. And he lost his parents in war. And she really connected with him, and she helped him out. He was a young boy, so she really helped him out. And I think through that connection, she named me Yahael. So it's not a typical West African name, but it's Yahael. It's a corruption of the word, the name Yahya, which is John the Baptist, for those who don't know. Camara is my father's name. My father is from Senegal, a place called the Casamance, or specifically Tambacounda. The significance of Camara are the first family in Mande, and we're all originally Maraka Sonke. So the Camaras are found all over West Africa. You have Camaras in Ivory Coast, Mali, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Gambia. You have Camara everywhere, Mauritania as well. And my mother is from Nigeria, and her surname is Onono. Ononos are known to be the only Ononos in the town I'm from. It means that we're related. And we come from an ethnic group that are known. My mom is half Hausa, half Igbo, and she took her Igbo surname. But that ethnic group that we particularly come from is Igala, from the north, which is Kogi State. But we settled in Igbo land, and that's how we came to be Onono.
Thank you for that. And I'll ask you the same question. The story of your name, who named you, and the significance of your name to you.
Yeah, my name is Jali Bakary. So my father gave that name to me, and then Jalis mean griot. Like I said, it's from the blood. So if anyone called me Jali, they would know that it's from griot family straight. So because of we are griot family, so that's why they named me, after my uncle called Jali Brahma. He's a great kora player too. And then I'm from Mandinka tribe, from Gambia, West Africa. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. So kind of carrying along with that and thinking about your kind of family origins, I was going to. Now I was just watching this movie. You may have seen it. It's called Brown Sugar. You remember that movie? And they asked a question: when did you fall in love with hip hop? I'm not gonna ask you that. But what I will ask you is, when did you fall in love with music? And I know that you have two different pathways, because I think for you were born to do this, right? And then for some of us, we may have come to this, depending on the history. So when did you fall in love with music, and what were some of your earliest memories around that?
Some of my earliest memories of music was, I was very small, maybe around 3, 4, and I remember just having like a bowl, like a mix. Your mom has a mixing bowl, and just I'm going shush. I was making noise. That was my earliest memory. But I remember going to school, primary school, and having like in the UK we used to have these wooden desks that you could lift up and put your stuff inside. And there was I had one desk. I really liked the sound of it. Play it. My teachers would also tell me shush. And but my grandfather really, God bless his soul, really recognized from an early age that I really like music and I really like drumming. So he bought me a tama, a very small talking drum, and it was maybe this small. I took it to bed, I wake up with it, anybody takes it off me, I cry, you know. Then when I was around 8, my mom bought me my first djembe. And from then, coupled with the fact of, you know, we have these things, especially in, not just in West African culture, but in black cultures in general, and I'm sure others as well, but I'm speaking from a black point of view, where on a Sunday, your mom sits down to clean, or whether it's a cleaning day, and you hear Lionel Richie, Jimmy Cliff, I heard Umu Sangare, I heard Salif Keita, Yusundur, Fela Kuti, Osita Osedebe, all these music styles were what I associated Sunday mornings with. And especially in the summer and the lights coming in, you can hear the hoover and there's mopping the floor. And that's, to me, some of my earliest memories of music, actually, that I really can associate and I really fell in love, because you learn these songs by heart. And that coupled with the songs that you see at naming ceremonies, etc., etc. But really, those are some of my earliest memories.
And what about you? I mean, for you, given that your father was a griot, your grandfather was a griot, your great-grandfather was a griot, and you can go down the line, generations and generations. For you, when did you fall in love with it, or when did you come to know that this is something that, even though it was a legacy for you, that you would continue on a path with?
Yeah, for me, I started learning for age of 7, but from 7 to 8 to come 9, I'm not focusing too much because I like football. So, and then, you know, my dad teach me a very small part, and then he take me to my uncle, so to teach me how to play kora. So if I'm not playing, my uncle used to beat me. So he said to me, "You have to play this, you have to," you know. So, but I was stubborn, I'm not doing it. But age of 10, and then I start focusing more. So I start even playing concerts. So my dad used to come to England. He do all over, he tour all over the Europe. So he used to bring me, you know, small amplifier. You know, so when you give that to me, I said, oh, and then I plug it to my kora, and then I heard the sound. I said, oh, I love this. So I start to organize, you know, my boys. You know, you know, because one of my cousins also make drum. So we try to buy drums, you know, small drums, and then other instruments. So we start to go into the naming ceremony. So since that time, I'm, you know, definitely 100% in the music, you know.
And just to follow up on that, and maybe on a more personal note, I guess for your children, right? You'll start teaching them and passing this down. How would you feel if, or what are the feelings of those griots who don't carry on the music? Is there some kind of not resentment or disappointment? I mean, I think for some of us, I know growing up in the Bronx, it was the definition of success was doctor, lawyer, engineer, or something in business, because a lot of West Africans or Africans like business. But how disappointed would you be, or are there expectations that this has to carry on? So let's say, your children decide they don't want to carry on this tradition,
I think from my point of view, not all of my children, but definitely, you know, some have to play kora to pass. To keep the traditional is very important for us, you know. It's very, very important, because I see some family, you know, they are griots, but since their parents passed away, the younger one, they don't have opportunity to have kora in their house, you know, and then we grown up together, and then after then they feel very bad, you know. They started age of 18, some start to learn, you know, they realize definitely, you know, we should learn this, you know, and then as a griot, you know, traditional, you know, we definitely have to keep our culture not fading away, not dying. It's very important in our community. For me, definitely my brother's kids are there, which is, I'm teaching them now, you know, my younger brother is there who is teaching them how to play kora, and then we pass by, you know, if I have the kids, my kids also the same. I will pass them, to the next generation. So we have to keep the traditional culture to pass by to the generation, not fading away. It's very important for me.
What about you? What are your thoughts on that, given the two different pathways?
I think for me, the most important thing that I can instill into my children is a sense of self. I think it's important, yes, to have an art and a craft. I think it's different. I'm not a griot. So a craft is not an obligation to me. It's a choice. But I think it's important to know who you are. I think that's what the embodiment of a griot is, or embodiment of sharing a culture, or having the opportunity to know who you are. It sets you up for life, having a center and a core. Especially
actually on that thought, because I think we're coming from a shared level of understanding here because we've grown up in this, but can you talk to the audience a little bit about Mande traditions and a little bit about when you say you're not a griot, can you explain a little bit about what that means, how that's tied to lineage, as you know, and talk a little bit about the caste system a little bit as well.
So when I say that I'm not a griot or Jali, in Manding society and other societies around us, like the Wolof or the Pul or Hausa, we work with a caste kind of strata that we work with. Not everyone in West Africa has it, but a lot of us do. The caste system can start from nobility, artisans, and then serfs or slaves. The griot fall into the artisan caste, which is split into four. Okay, we have Garanke, which are leather workers, Numu, which are blacksmiths, Fina, which are orators. I come from a Fina caste myself, and Jeli are the griots. Okay. Now the caste that we have, depending on the caste, you are either appointed, for example, with the serf caste or the servant caste, the slave caste, you can become a slave. You can also come out of slavery. But then if you are Woloso or you're born of a slave, then that's your caste you're born into, right? Jali is one of those castes that are hereditary. You cannot become a Jali. You cannot, even if you like music till you die, you know the history till tomorrow. Your best friend or your husband is, or your wife is a griot. You can never become a griot. You must be born into Jalia. The same with Fina, and same with Garankeo, with the same with Numu, with Tage. You must be born into it. Okay? So when I say that I'm not a griot, but I still love music and I love my culture. But it's not an obligation for me. Okay? It's not an obligation for me to follow the path of music. But it's an obligation, especially as a Fina, to know who I am and know where I come from. And that's what I really want to impart onto my daughters. That they speak their language. They know where they come from. Anyone asks them or they go anywhere, they know that they have a base and a foundation to properly articulate their life experiences based on where they're coming from. And therefore have a root that they can always go back to. I think a lot of the issues with second generation and third generation, that we're talking about kids that are born in the diaspora, we lose value, or we feel that value is lost in our origins because our parents have left their origins to find something better outside. And we forget that even though we've left something for economical sense, it doesn't necessarily mean that they left a life that was worse in all senses. There's so much that's missing in the West, and there's so much in terms of social structure, in terms of community, in terms of culture, and a lot of that is rooted in our identity. And our parents, try as they might, don't always, especially older generations that have a very sometimes blinkered mindset of seeing things that we left for your education. You must be educated in this way. You must go to university. You haven't succeeded if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or or something that is. But like my mom is very successful, but she's 60 something and still working, and she's exhausted. And sometimes I sit down and ask her, Mom, if you had the choice would you have stayed or would you have gone home? Would you be doing this if you were back home? And she says, no, but I gave my life to make sure that you can do what you do. And so there's a disconnect when I'm doing music. And my mom's like, I didn't leave for you to... So I left this behind, you're picking it up again. But now that they see that you can be successful and have different things, as they get older, their mentality changes, you know. They see a value in knowing who you are, because it gets to the point when you're an adult and you're trying to reason with your parents, or you want to go and marry, and then the grandkids can't speak their language, and all of a sudden they're upset. But you didn't take the time to actually engage and take that culture into consideration while your children were young. So, yeah, for me, I want to continue the cycle of being in a family where one knows where they're from, they're proud of where they're from. It really shields you, especially being black in the West is very difficult. Being of color in the West is very difficult, but surtout being black is very difficult. And just dealing with the aesthetic of your skin and it being the first thing you see, and then not knowing where you're from, so you're unable to defend, that difference is very difficult as well. So I think it's very...
Yeah. And I want to, yes, for real, I want to talk a little bit about that, and I think you're touching on this, to talk about anti-black racism, right, and experiences that you may have had. And so when we talk about anti-black racism, we're talking about prejudices, beliefs, and stereotypes that is declared about people that are African and or of African descent, right? And it's rooted in the histories of slavery and colonization, right? Because I know a lot of times we focus on the transatlantic slave trade, which I actually call the Black Holocaust, because literally what was lost was that severe. But also thinking at the same time while the transatlantic slave trade is happening, colonialism is really, really going all throughout, really all 53 countries, and some may say all 54, 55 countries of Africa, depending on who you ask, with the exception being Ethiopia. And thinking about the ways in which it has become part of our systems. And so one of the direct outcomes of this has been international racism, and I think we've talked a little bit about that as well, but I want to talk about your experiences of anti-black racism, growing up in London, or just in any of the other contexts in which you've lived, and the impact that has had, like you said, on the skin, right? That this carrying this skin and what that means, right? Of blackness. So I don't know if you want to start off there.
I'm just gonna say as a disclaimer, I'm not somebody that minces words, so I'm gonna be very straightforward, and let you know what I want, basically. What's going on? Right, for other people, you know what I'm saying.
We want to know.
I grew up in Harlesden. Harlesden, at the time when I was growing up, was a very difficult area. It was a very hard area to grow up in. And it was really, between music and basketball, were the two things and obviously my mom's fervent discipline that kept me on a very straight path. But I didn't go to school in Harlesden. My mom wanted me out of the area. I'm talking about secondary school. But from primary school, I remember going to a school in central London. It was called St. Mary Magdalene's. And I remember being chased by white students, and they were spitting on my clothes. Are you African this? Are you African booty structure? All those kind of things that came through. Go back to Africa, go back to where you come from. And I remember my mom coming into the school and finding the kid that's saying and telling him to clean my jacket. That's the kind of mom I had. But then I remember going off into secondary school. I went to the Ivory Coast for 3 years, and I came back to an international boarding school in Leicester before I went back to school in London. And in the boarding school, you are allowed out after school at certain hours before you come back into the boarding house for dinner. So if you finish school at 3, you come back, you're allowed to go out into the town, buy sweets, do those kind of things. It's a small town in Leicester. And you're allowed to go from 3 to 5. You're allowed to go out. And on the weekends, you're allowed to go shopping or whatever, as long as you're with a chaperone, or if you're a certain age, you can go out by yourself, as long as you're back by a designated hour. And I remember the second time I went out, there was a bunch of kids that saw, because I was the only other black child. The other black kid was an older, Abu Bakr Jawad, is the son of Elder Jawad. And he was Gambian. The son of the ex-president of Gambia was the only other black kid in that school, but he was a lot older than me. He's now the diplomat he's now the ambassador of the UK, of Gambia to the UK now. And I remember going out and being surrounded and just being pushed around by a bunch of white kids. And I heard the N-word. And then the teacher from the school kind of intervened before anything happened. And their way of dealing with it was then saying, okay, while you're at this school, you're not allowed to go out anywhere. So for the year I was left at that school, I wasn't allowed to go out. I come from school, I go straight to the boarding house. Weekends I don't go out. And the only time I could come to London was every 4 weeks to see family. So instead of dealing with the problem, because those kids were in the school, instead of dealing with the school kids, they dealt with me. I then came back to London to school in a place called Ruislip. And that school experience was like things you hear in movies. We had adults come to school saying that they don't want the N-word with schooling with their children. They jumped the gate with dogs, and we had to fight out the school. We fought for. I was in year 10. I don't know what the schooling kind of thing is here, but year 10 in the UK, you're around 14, 15 before you do GCSEs, which is a year before. And you fight almost for your life, kind of. And the police came and didn't do anything about it. And you're in class and they're writing stuff on your notebooks, they're throwing eggs at you on the street. I remember a girl got like dog poop in her bag. Lots of things happened. And then I left school and I went to university and I had the fighting on my knuckles from being jumped outside of uni. And but we went through all this trauma in London. People in London don't really believe, because when you're in the inner city, it's always touted as a multicultural city, place of diversity. But it's multicultural, but it's still quite segregated. And people don't really mix, and we're still dealing with a lot of anti-black racism on a violent level. So those are the kind of things that are strewn around. And then with COVID happening, there was a gentleman that went on Sky News, and he said that the stabbings, because London has a big an issue with knife crime, which isn't set to a set community, and the policeman went on saying black single mothers are doing this, and that. And he went on big Sky News and said this, and so many people agreeing, and that it was, and Brexit, a lot of it was filled with racism, and with COVID, you could see the numbers of racist attacks on black staff went up threefold, even though black staff were on the front line. And we're just absorbing all of this trauma, we're just absorbing all of this, this aggression, this violence, and it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. But black people are still resilient. The top of the tables in schools going to Oxford and Cambridge are all Nigerian English or Ghanaian English young men and women. I don't know how else to tell you. It's been tough, even as musicians. The Londoners again will tell you, going to famous jazz clubs in the country and us contributing and literally building the jazz scene in the UK. But then sometimes some of the white musicians and white counterparts, who have worked hard as well, are still pushed forward to the fore and given opportunities, given funding, given sponsorship. And all of that plays to anti-black racism. Being here in the UAE, and I lived here for 6 years, and having gone through stuff in Dubai, I remember the UK, the way to get through the visa thing was to do the visa run, right? So you go to Oman and you turn around and you come back and your visa magically starts again, you know? And I remember the official taking my passport and looking and said, "You're from London?" I said, "Yeah." "No, you're not from London. You're from Nigeria." I said, I'm from Britain, bro. I'm English." No, you stay here. When you're ready to tell me where you're from, you tell me." And I stayed there for 3 hours. For 3 hours. You know, I had a friend of mine that went to a restaurant, and at the restaurant, she was waiting to be served. This was in LA. I was waiting to be served. And then when she said, "Excuse me, I'm waiting for my order," they said, "Oh, your mistress isn't coming?" And she's like, "I work for the UN." You know? So these things are all a huge part of our fabric that I've had to go through. Traveling, sometimes I travel to places and I check on Google, how many black people are here? And is it safe for black people to walk out the street at night? You know, I go to these places and I've been to so many different countries. And it's the same everywhere. There's not one place that I haven't felt out of place or been made to feel out of place, if that makes sense.
And so I think as we think about like global anti-blackness and kind of some of the movements that have been happening post George Floyd, I think, you know, continued education, continued engagement, continued, you know, just bringing awareness even to some of the ways in which systemically this may show up, even in the music scenes, and the ways in which, you know, we have to make space for artists from all different backgrounds and all different cultures in order to kind of shift some of that. So, excuse me, y'all. It's coming back. I'm trying to hold it on. But just kind of to turn a little bit back to thinking about some of the music, right? And I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm just kind of following along on the same stream. Audre Lorde, this is one of my favorite quotes, says, "There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." And one of the things as we think about intersectionality, right, the different parts of our identity that we bring to our music, and just reading a little bit about, you know, your history and your background, and what ways, you know, do you bring in your Gambian, your African, your Muslim identities? How do they show up within your music?
Western world?
Your music, like the different parts of it, you know, being Gambian, being Muslim, like what are the different ways? How does that show up in the music?
Yeah, it's, you know, for me, you know, being a Gambian or Muslim, to play music, you know, I don't find it difficult, especially when I'm in Africa. But I remember the time I came to UK 2014. So I was living in Essex, so which is very whitey area. You know, I don't think I even met blacks there. You know, I stayed there for like 4 years. But to see, you know, Africa or black, you know, is very difficult. You know, so I went to one of the pub. You know, it's very famous there. So every month, the last Saturday, they do jamming there. As a musician come and do jamming. So I go there for like 3 times, but anytime when I go, no one even greet me. If I even say to everyone hi, you know, no one answers, you know. So one day I said, okay, you know what, maybe I should bring my kora to this, you know, to sing, because you just come and register, you know, you put your name and then they call your name and then you jam. So I went there with my kora and then I put my name, and then my time came, they called me, and then when I performed. So since I performed, I finished, the owner of the pub, he just come to me He said, oh, what kind of instruments is this? Oh, we like this, you know. You know what? Next week also, you know, you can come here. So the following week also I went and I performed. He said to me, oh, no, this is so great, you know, everyone love you here, you know. So he said to me, you know what, now you will be playing here every week. You know, every week we need you here, you know. So after then, you know, the audience, you know, someone come to me and said to me, let me buy you a beer. I said, no, sorry, I don't drink beer, you know, but I can drink soft drinks, you know. So the owner of the pub, you know, he came to me, said to me, but one thing surprised me here, why everyone love you, and then they like you so much, you know. I said to him, you know, I think, you know, you are mistaken. No one loves me here. Because I've been coming here for 3 times, having drinks here. No one even offered me a drinks, you know. I think, you know, they love, everyone love my kora, this instrument, but not me, you know. He said, oh, are you sure? I said, yeah, definitely, you know, they love the music, the kora, but not me, because I've been coming here for 3 days, so I think they love the music, so yeah, that was, you know, another experience for me. I never experienced that kind of thing, you know, that's the first time, you know.
So being outside of the area, okay. So I wanna, I know I've been highlighting you two. I want to talk a little bit also about the group. And you started in 2019, right before the pandemic.
The best choice I ever made.
So I was very, and you've had a lot of success in a short amount of time, but I was curious about how the pandemic impacted your work. How did you survive through the pandemic? What did you do? How did you stay unified? How did you make music given, or did you break the rules?
No, don't say that. We stayed in our houses.
Okay. But no, I want to hear a little bit about that, because I think we talked a little bit about some of the innovative ways in which people, we saw that with verses and the ways in which people try to be innovative during that time. But can you talk a little bit about coming together to form the group and then going right into the pandemic?
So, Balimaya, as you said, the word Balimaya means the essence of or what makes up family, what makes up a kinship, right? So, the essence of kinship. He likes to say, sounds like a perfume, but it really was a testament to everybody, because when we started, we had no idea that the pandemic was going to hit, unless anybody knew. I had no idea it was COVID. When I heard COVID, it's the day that they put everyone in lockdown. So I was like, what's going on? This is crazy. And I know before we did our first shows, we'd been rehearsing for almost a year. We've just been going together weekly and rehearsing. And anybody's free, we get together and work. And that spirit of, but one of the things that we've been founded on was that unity of everybody working together, right? So as young black men and coming together and playing music that is essentially ours, having in that space to express ourselves, was something that was really important to me. And the ethos of the group was also important to everyone that's seated here. So going into the pandemic, it affected us in terms of our individual livelihoods and individual kind of movements physically as well. But we still wanted to record, we still wanted to do anything, and we had nothing else to do. So luckily in the UK, it was coming towards summer, so we could kind of rehearse outside. We had a lot of the percussionists, especially myself, Chris, so we used to go to a park and just play. So by the time we got to go into the studio, it was like a lockdown. We locked ourselves in and we were just working. And that's kind of continued and blossomed into how it blossomed today. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. I actually don't know. Do we still have some time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll give me a signal? All right, thank you. I know I'm going out of tune, but I just want to make sure, because I don't have a clock. One of the things, in thinking about the group, right, given the vast diversity of the group, in terms of where people are from, I mean, I think we started to talk about this a little bit. What are your thoughts on like cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation as we think about landing music traditions and the ways in which, you know, thinking about the collective, but also thinking about preserving some of those histories, and what are your thoughts or experiences around that, as it pertains to the group or just even outside of the group?
Well, so cultural appropriation can be seen in some people as almost like a buzzword that is they're used to, you know, incite something, or like a conversation finisher. You just appropriate something, that person has to shut up because they can't see. But I think it's deeper than that. I think when you appreciate something, you step into it fully and give yourself, and also ask permission. You find out where the boundaries are. You acknowledge the boundaries. You acknowledge its limitations. You acknowledge what you can and cannot do and accept it. You accept what those boundaries are. I am not allowed into this space, and that's okay because it's not for me. The space has been created for a certain group. Respect that space, right? When we appropriate, we step into something and we tread all over it. We put our fingers, oh, this looks nice, so I can use it. You know, this is great, I'm going to take that too. Without wondering what the limitations are, without acknowledgement, without proper education, without thought, and without also including those that have shown you the way of that culture. I think with the diverse nature of the group in Balimaya Project, and even though we're all black people, doesn't mean that black people are a monolith, and therefore we all as black people have access to everything that is coming from black cultures. All those cultures are different and have their rules and regulations. And that's why I'm very key, even as a bandleader myself, I still ask and still want to make sure that I work within the parameters of what is acceptable in my culture. And that's why one has to surround himself with people like Jali Bakary Konteh that are coming from back home, that can then give you the scope. Because as much as we come from West African family and household, we were raised abroad, you know? So we have to have people that are able to inform us. We have to have elders around us and those that we can ask for advice. We also have to acknowledge that these guys are not mandate. The only mandate people in the group at the moment are three. There's Momo Sangare, myself, and Jali Bakary Konteh. You understand that, coming from that background. So with that, however, because we would like to believe that we've studied extensively and we've done our research on our part, and we know what we can transmit and what is okay for them to step into, we can then say, okay, this is fine, you can do this. And we take on ourselves. And with also the authorization from the community as well, back home, you know. Like I said, for example, if I ever use an arrangement and I use a traditional folk song, there's songs or rhythms and stuff that I don't touch, because, like I said, to play a djembe or to play a kora or whatever, you either have to come from a caste that plays it, or you must be initiated into playing it. That applies to certain rhythms and songs as well. And you have to be mindful of those kind of limitations and things. And so that's where I think where the difference lies. Respect is the ultimate, you know, yardstick.
And thank you for that. And going along the same lines, in thinking about the griots, right, and the history and the significance of it, for you, are there limitations on what you share with the group in terms of the different music traditions? Are you able to kind of go deeper in terms of, and I think we talked a little bit before about sometimes coming into spaces where you hear people playing certain music traditions that probably are off limits. And so have you ever been in situations where you kind of step into that, where you're stopping that, or where you feel like you have a responsibility to say, this is where the limitation is?
In the griots, especially in the, the kora side, like before, if you are not a griot, you don't allow to touch kora, because I remember my childhood time when my friends, they touch my kora, I feel very upset and I'm angry because, they don't allow to touch it, but the time I'm growing, and then I even teach some friends how to play because we became, it became like very unique, universal and international. So we have, friends, students all over the world to teach them. And then in those days also to even build it, only the griots can build it. But now this generation, even if you are not griot, they can build a kora. Some people are there which is they are not griot, but they still build it. And then the music-wise also, we love to share our music and our culture, universally, so that our culture can be everywhere to share with people who can know where we came from. So, yeah.
I'm of a slightly different mindset to Jali Bakary. I think that if I'm teaching anything, I give some and keep some. Personally, I don't think everybody is owed everything. I don't believe everyone is owed everything. I think there are limits to things, and people, again, like I said, people have to understand that enough is enough. I think, especially because I cannot speak from a griot's perspective, I can speak from second gen perspective, and so therefore having the perspective of both. Well, sometimes coming from the continent can give you a limited view to how things happen on the other side, and how then things can be exploited or taken around and twisted, and we can be moved out of it, if that makes sense, moved out of that space. So I have a different view. I don't share everything. I don't explain everything. I don't play everything. I don't involve myself in everything, because if it's not my place to involve myself, then I have no business being there. I think xama tuwaale parce que léegi laajte ngay laajte léegi nii moo ko tontu est-ce que boo fekkee da ngay partager affaire yi nii comme musique bi da ngay jox lépp wala da ngay cacher tuuti da ngay jël tuuti pour yow wala da ngay jox yëpp.
No.
Yeah. He doesn't give everything either.
Yeah.
Tu comprends moi? Léegi nii soo fekkee da ngay jox affaire yi ko jox lépp.
Yeah, you have to keep some for yourself.
Yeah.
That's important.
Am na suñu cosaan.
Yeah, that's a lot of this.
I said we can do audience.
Oh, okay, I was just waiting. Actually, what I want to end on before we get to audience questions, as we know, music has a certain place in all of our lives, and I know we've been talking a lot about some of the challenges and some of the pain points, but what is Black joy for you, and what brings you joy within this? As we're thinking about what lies ahead and thinking about the impact that your music has, what is Black joy for you?
Black joy. I find questions like this kind of difficult to answer because I know no other joy but Black joy. If that makes sense. Because I am who I am, so I can only experience joy in the way I see it. But let me try. I see.
Well, I can give some context to that. I think some of these thinking ahead and thinking about some of the ways in which individuals have been trying to shift the paradigm in terms of the ways in which we think about the Black experience as being something that has been filled with pain, and just thinking about the Afrofuturism and what lies ahead. What are the ways in which, for example, we talk about how Black boys for example, never really get to experience that boyhood and that childhood, and how can we further talk about joy instead of just kind of always focusing it on the trauma that we face. So what does that mean for you outside of that, and just thinking about what lies ahead?
I think then in that context, for me, empowerment is very important. I see people being empowered and educated. I see, how do I explain it? Things that I find joy in, and the expression of culture, you know, and people loving their culture without excuses. I find joy in seeing my people together and everyone having a great time. One of the most joyful moments I've had this year was being able to go to Senegal with the whole band and show everyone where we come from. And for me, just seeing everybody step into places, and sometimes, especially for some people that maybe from the Caribbean or from West Africa and really haven't connected to that side, stepping into a place and being assumed that you're from there and not looking like the odd one out. And you step in, people don't look at you like, what's this guy doing here? That second glance, that doesn't happen. And just seeing the relief and seeing people just kind of going in tentatively, and in the next 2 days just sitting back and thinking, like, I belong here. You know, that for me was amazing, and seeing people see that they have a space. I think being able to provide opportunities and being able to use a platform that you have to provide opportunities for others to go on the same journey that you have and provide the resources that you wish you had, I think for me is joyful and something that I've really taken time into. And I also enjoy just being a father. I enjoy seeing my kids growing up, but in the context of knowing exactly who they are. There's djembes in the house, there's kamelengoni in the house, there's music in the house that they enjoy, and just being encouraged to do that. I think for me that is a huge step in the right direction.
Thank you. And translate for them in words.
Yes,
What makes you happy?
What makes you happy? Yeah,
That's that one. Yes, like it's the same, like, you know, music makes me very happy, especially when I'm playing music. I feel so happy, and then like to be around my people also, like the boys, and we always have fun, and then we are happy, and the family, and then to have always good experience to go to place you never been, and then you meet some people, you know, so all that makes me so happy.
Well, great. So now I want to turn it over to the audience for questions. And I'm so sorry. I didn't have my phone.
No time.
We laugh. That's okay. Any questions from the audience, thoughts or comments?
You've talked a lot about Senegal, and I read that you played with Baba Mal, and you made quite a few references to Senegal. How's your Nigerian roots also kind of influenced you?
Of course, what I eat, the way I speak. My mom is Nigerian, I'm very proud to be. I speak my languages as well. I speak 2 Nigerian languages fluently. They very much influence who I am. The resilience of Nigerian people, the discipline and the spirit of, and the doggedness of Nigerian is one thing that I'm very much known for. So, you know, that's something that I really take pride in. They're all nodding. But yes, so that's one thing that's very much instilled in me. But I'm still very Senegalese as well.
What about in your playing?
Some ways, yes, because I'm influenced by Nigerian music as well. So I think there's things that it means that I'm able to play in more environments. So if there's people playing Fuji music, I can play along and kind of give because I listen to it, so it's something that I feel. If they're playing Igbo music, I can play the Igbo instrument, the Igbo set completely. But then I also can play a Ghanaian set as well as I play djembe set as well. Because one of the instruments I started with as well was the ewe and the akan set. So I can play their music fluently as well with the same language, and thus can speak their language as well. So I feel very Pan-African in many ways, because I feel like I can definitely tap into multiple identities. But that's also a testament to London as well, because we're surrounded by so many different ethnic groups and cultures.
No.
Oh, you were just jumping around. All right. Oh, you have a question.
I feel like I've been asking you questions already. Happy to ask. If you felt like letting us hear the sound of that instrument, I think that would be fine.
Why don't you sing me?
Sing me.
So he's gonna sing a little bit of my Touray Monday morning.
Fatiah Touray. Fatiah Touray. Turengana mandi more. Jalengana mandi more. Mandi suma follow ni mandi suma labang. Fatima Touray. Obekalo Fatima Imaje gambia janyudi atala Sarapuna polo gambia janyudi atala even the kick camera
That's also part of the tradition that we have to honor our griots. And we were having a conversation yesterday about the ways in which individuals were so innovative during COVID that our griots from our community would get all dressed up and sing you, like take videos and send it to your WhatsApp and then say, cash app me. And we would send the cash apps. And that's how they maintain throughout COVID. So I just want to thank our guests. I want to thank you. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. See you all at the concert. on Friday, I mean you for sure in the back, 7:30 at the Red Theater. Thank you everyone, have a nice evening.
Thank you.